So I'm assuming that you've recognized by now that, that we had some last-minute changes since we printed out that agenda. So we'll have a new version tomorrow that we'll be distributing, but if you want the latest on today, it's all on the website, the agenda website, or the website on the agenda. So right now we are discussing youth in India. India's youth is the youngest large population in the world. Half the country is under the age of 25. Something like 65% of the country is under the age of 35. And it can be, for India as a country, either a blessing or a curse, depending on education, future of work issues, and that is going to decide the long-term story about not only India, but certainly the potential for India to act beyond its borders and be an economic engine for the world that it can be. So we have some fantastic folks who have joined us today. We have Diane Gatwa, who is the Vice President of Global Business Operations at the National Basketball Association. Thank you.
Hi.
We have Swami Ananda, who is the founder of the Dig Darshan Secondary School in just outside of Patna in Bihar. Bihar is one of, it's doing better economically, but it's still lagging in certain respects behind some of the other states like Gujarat. But there's a lot going on there that's really interesting and has some very interesting leadership. And I'm really glad to have you today, Swami. By the way, he's got an amazing story that would take a long time to tell all the cools. I mean, I really recommend getting to know him. He's amazing stories. Been in LA, participated in the Free Tibet concert in the 90s, and just does all kinds of interesting things in the Bay Area with the tech community there, and was a professor at Stanford for a long time. His insight for us today is his involvement with the Dig Darshan school. So he just came back from the school and has interesting things to say about that. We have Daryl Bricker, who is the CEO of Ipsos Public Affairs. He is writing a book next year. It'll be his 6th book, and he's exploring big picture demographic issues that buck a lot of conventional wisdom. We did a podcast on this about a month ago, if you've been following along. Amazing things that he'll be able to tell us about what's going on, not only with India, but with the world. He's starting off our day tomorrow as well. And we have Ben Dietz, the Senior Vice President of Sales at Vice Media. And he's doing some interesting things in India as well. And we're going to get into that right now. So Daryl, you're the man with the big picture. Let's start with the question of why is India's young population so important, and why do people spend so much time thinking about it?
Well, they spend a lot of time thinking about it because they should be thinking about it. In this decade, so the 2020s, as we come up to it, India is going to pass China as the most populated country in the world. And it's not going to be a gradual passing, it's going to be an accelerated differentiation between the two of them. China's in a position where it's probably going to lose, depending on the estimates you want to believe, somewhere between 300 and 500 million people from their population over the space of the next 70 years. They're in a desperate situation when it comes to fertility in China. So India's fertility rate now is not as high as people think. It's about 2.5. So to have a replacing population, just to replace the number of people who are dying, you need at least 2.1 to keep your population at a steady state. India right now is at about 2.5, but when I was there last year, the demographers in the country were telling me it's probably closer to about 2.1 right now, so basically at replacement level. China's at 1.7, according to one Chinese statistical bureau, but according to another one, it's probably closer to about 1.2. So they're in a desperate situation when it comes to replacing their population. But not only that, we have to combine it with the fact that the Chinese population also lives longer than the Indian population. So the average Chinese person lives about 7 years longer than the average Indian. And what that means is that where we've seen the biggest improvement in terms of demographics in the world, it's that we've been able to improve a lot in terms of keeping people alive. So my expectation is that India is going to improve along with China and along with everybody else in terms of the longevity of the population, which is going to mean even that they accelerate faster past China in terms of population size. And not only that, when you take a look at the Indian population and the Chinese population, overall, they're younger. The median age, so half the population is older and then half the population is younger, in China today is 39. In India, it's only 28. So when you look at those demographic factors, you see what's going to very quickly happen is India is going to pass China, but not just to creep past China, it's going to accelerate through the rest of this century. So there's a demographic dividend that India is going to experience that's going to mean huge things in terms of the commercial opportunities that exist in that country, but also in terms of the opportunity that they have to continue to modernize their economy. One of the issues that they will have to deal with, though, is that the biggest diaspora in the world right now is from India. So if you want to know where the most migrants are from any country in the world today, it's from India. So the question is whether or not they're going to be able to keep those people at home and they're going to join the middle class in India, or they're going to go off to other places to improve their economic opportunities in those other countries. So that's what's happening.
Nice. That's so we're looking at the future of this situation and saying it could yield huge dividends. Let's see how India plays it. I think we covered a lot of that in previous panels, and there will be more to come. But let's dive into how companies are accessing this and participating in it. Diane, why is India so important to the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, a few of the points that Daryl highlighted, right? When we think about India, when the NBA thinks about India, a lot of those factors, right? Massive, 1.3 billion population, young, 28 is the median age, as Daryl said. It's rapidly digitizing. I think by 2030, 50% of the total population would be online at that point. If you look at their social media users, it's about 300 million. If you look at particularly the sports landscape, it's also very interesting for us because I wouldn't say it's nascent, but it's definitely fast growing. If you look at the media and entertainment industry, and the sports industry within that, it actually triples in the next 8 years. And we think about it and we look at the sports that are extremely popular in the market now. I mean, I think no doubt cricket is still the most popular sport and it will continue to be, but our goal is to be at least a top 3 sport. We're not quite in the top 10 sport yet, but we're definitely making investments in the market to break into that top 3. And then I would say too, I think, you know, if we look at the sport of basketball and we look at that market, it fits really well. Very urban, they like superstars, and like the NBA is obviously a league of superstars. And so we just think it's really compelling for us. And we also don't think, you know, the NBA and basketball is a global sport. You cannot be a global league without having a meaningful presence in India. And so that's why we're very focused on it.
Excellent. So where are some of these investments that you're placing going? I understand that you're making a lot of partnerships and going about it and developing a really interesting network out there.
Yeah, so I mean, there's, I would say maybe 4 pockets, right? Or it's a 4-pronged strategy for us. So when we look at international markets, I think it's very important that our content is out there and it's broadly distributed. So we need to make sure that we find the right partner that obviously has a wide distribution. Right now our partner is Sony. We have a 5-year deal with them, and so our games are broadcast, unfortunately 4 a.m., starting at 4 a.m., because it's a schedule, right? Because it's prime time here in the United States.
Coming back from Indian raves. Right?
No, but we're starting to, I mean, to your question, you know, directly to answer your question, now we're starting to look at the schedule of some of our games, and we're trying to, well, this is going to be the 2nd year that we're actually going to play 5 consecutive Sundays, and we've branded it that way. NBA Sundays, so that the game is on prime time in India. So it'll start either 9:30 or 10 p.m., and Sony is definitely putting marketing dollars behind that. So that's one initiative. And then the other initiative that we have, again, still focused on content, is for the first season, last year, actually the last season, 78 of our games that were broadcast in India had Hindi commentary. So then that widens our reach. We're thinking about other languages right now. I mean, there's 22 languages across that market. And obviously, it costs money to have in-language commentary. But again, Sony, as our partner, is supporting us and co-investing with us. And then, so that's on the content side, right? And then we also obviously are very focused on basketball development. So a key piece for us is making sure that the local basketball ecosystem is robust. So from, when we look at the kids, we're talking about youth specifically. And when, at least at the NBA, when we talk about youth, we talk about 6-year-olds to 17-year-olds. And then within that segment, we look at 6 to 12 and then 13 to 17, because we do see a change in their behavior and how they're influenced. 6 to 12-year-olds listen to their parents or family, more influenced by them, and then 13 to 17 are more influenced by their peers and their friends and social media and all that stuff. But anyway, so when we look at that market, we make sure that, one, we're able to increase participation, and all that means is on court, getting them to play the sport of basketball, because we see that there's, when they start to play, then they become fans. Sometimes they become fans first, and then they start to play. So sometimes it differs. But then, so we have junior NBA programs that get kids to play the sport of basketball. And then at the same time, we also focus on engagement. And when I say engagement, all that means is off court. So making sure that we are in the places, in the channels, or in the platforms where kids spend the most of their time on.
Including cricket, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, but it's interesting. One of our partnerships is with a company called Dream11. Mm-hmm. So it's a fantasy gaming company. Most of their users are on their platform because of cricket and kabaddi and soccer and all these other sports that are much more popular than basketball. But guess what? They cross-promote. We cross-promote across those sports. And so some cricket fantasy users are now starting to play fantasy basketball, which is, of course, great for us.
Nice. And Ben, similar kind of question. Why is India so important to Vice, and how are you guys accessing the market to set yourself up over the years?
Sure. So I feel like I'm very loud. I'm going to hold the mic further from my face. If it's too loud, I can just shout. It's fine. So Vice is a company dedicated sort of uniquely to generations X, Y, and Z, depending on where we reach people and the platforms that they find us through. X with people that have known the company for a long time, Y as the core audience, and now Z coming online and becoming the future core. India, for that reason, is crucially important, right? Like as a growing market and just as a center of youth energy around the world, crucial for us to look at that and figure out what Indian young people are looking at, what interests them and what's propelling them into the future, for all the reasons that you guys have talked about. The other reason is that we think, the best stories for Vice's platforms and Vice's audiences globally come from sources that they have not previously had exposure to, and India, generally speaking, is an unknown market in terms of storytelling and in terms of a source of content. And then the last one is because, it is undergoing such an incredible rapid rate of change at the moment that we're looking at and very inspired by all of the changes in behavior that are being driven by everything from the tech infrastructure to social upheaval to the fact that 180 million people are going to come online and be able to vote for the first time in the 2019 election. So it's a melting pot and a cauldron of just energy and excitement. If you think about the way that two examples I think really are driving us at the moment. One is that the adoption of content through mobile, led by the adoption of YouTube on video over the last couple of years, has meant that you have this massive new paradigm for storytelling. The other thing is that because of the disparate nature of all of the states of India and the fact that it is in itself sort of a construct, right, of all of these different ethnicities and cultures, means that search is going to change a lot, and that voice is going to become very important there, right? We have always been storytellers through every media that our audience wants to consume it in, and so seeing the way voice expands there will give us a template for how we take storytelling for the rest of the world.
How come? Is it, I mean, for one thing, I mean, one of the not so great facts about India is that there is still a pretty high illiteracy rate, especially outside of cities. Is it for that reason, or is it something else?
Well, I mean, the illiteracy drives it, but by the same token, all of the different languages and all of the like you have shared areas of interest, right, which is what the MBA is trying to tap into, but you also have disparate cultures, disparate geographies, areas of the country that have nothing to do with one another. What you need to be able to do is to provide and access the content that they can all reach, right? Voice search allows you to do that because it doesn't rely on local language or that kind of specification. And then once the pipeline to the content is unlocked, people can consume. Now that's going to be what drives behavior for the rest of search elsewhere in the world. Like Google 10 years from now is going to be driven by voice search, not by the fact that you sit in front of a desktop and type in, the subject you're looking for.
So I'll ask both of you, but separately, do you feel like you're coming across authentically, and have you been, I'm sure you've been dedicating a lot of time and energy to that, and what is it you're doing to do that, right? I mean, India is such a different culture, even, the urban elites, they say that it's a little bit like an eggshell. It looks very Western, but still deep down it's extremely Indian in its own ways. What kind of measures are you guys taking to come across as Indian? Some of that might be the leadership that you've taken in the country, the teams that you've built there, or other things that you're doing. I mean, obviously partnering up with cricket is a big deal, right?
I mean, from our standpoint, everybody who works for us in India is from India, right? So 50 people in Mumbai, 10 people in Delhi, all of whom have grown up within the Indian media ecosystem and have come on board and joined us because we are newcomers to the market, but by the same token have a purview that where they understand what's going on in the rest of the world, and we do a lot to help them understand what has driven our business elsewhere. The Instagram presence for us in India is as regular and as good as it is in America because that team sat with our team in the US and took best practices and took it forward. The other thing is that we're really dedicated to making sure that we are doing as much in local language as possible, not just in Hindi, but also in many of the other regional languages, and that we are subtitling content back into as many languages as possible for local audiences. Because our philosophy is always you have to speak to your audience in the voice they speak to each other in. You can't do that if you're trying to translate monolithically, or alternately if you're insisting on reaching just those 100 million sort of English speakers at the top.
We know this from, I don't know if you guys have seen the Tamil translations that come up. There are whole blogs about how Tamil gets translated from movies and what it sounds like in English, and it is just uproariously funny. So we're a long way off from letting Google translate that stuff for us, I'm sure. So what about you, Diane?
Yeah, well, similar to what just Ben said, our team too, our entire team in India are are Indian, right? So they know the market, they're born and raised there, and so that's extremely important for us. And by the way, that is our approach across all the international markets that we do business in, or at least have offices in. And then I think I spoke about, time-shifting games and just trying to cater to that market. I think in terms of, if your question is like, how do we make sure we resonate?
Yeah, because and the reason why I think that this is important is that in both of your cases, there's a definite global appeal, right? There's a story in both cases that transcends any time and place. maybe in the case of NBA, there's the sheen of America that kind of, because of its long history here, but then on the other hand, there's a part of what you guys are doing that is definitely trying to morph a little bit and find that happy medium from the global to the local, which I think is just such an interesting task.
Yeah, a very specific example is, so most of our Saturday games, which again are broadcast very early, that's the earliest start is 4 a.m., but sometimes they could start 6, 7 a.m. So if you think about it, we actually get a lot of kids exposed to our games that way. So we now have this wraparound show called NBA Saturdays, where we have they're actually actors, talent that then provide commentary. It's not providing commentary to the games, but it's like when they break from the game, then they talk about the game and, just give their insights that way. And so that's one way we do it. And then I think another way that we do it is we do work with a lot of influencers. I guess when we think about that 13 to 17 market, and making sure we tap into their fan base.
We got a session about that tomorrow. This is really interesting to hear. So Swami, you just got back from your school.
Yeah.
Tell us about the reactions that you're seeing about that you're getting from the kids that you are sponsoring and helping to bring up, and their aspirations, the good life according to them. What do you notice?
As Daryl said, actually I was looking in the title, Young India. India is not young. India is a country, very old country, but Indians are young. And Julian rightly said, and Daryl also said, that India is demography. The greatest asset of this country is demography. Like, say, more than 65% people are age of 35. And so for the aging, a little bit lesser than China, but at the moment, the lesser aging country is Japan. So, as you say, from the very beginning, India's, today the world, we call, say, it's vibrant countries, it's very inspirational countries. Because why, as he said, I started my school in 1991. Because education is very dear and close to my heart, so I'm very passionate. So in the very beginning, when I was, before becoming Swami, I used to think, okay, why, I so-called, you say, we are born with silver spoon in our mouth. And other people, like India was called in the beginning, India was, not the mouse, which where today India technologically. So I'll take a step by step about technology. So I used to think about it. So as you're growing up, and then I started thinking about, it is something like, India, the two things are very powerful. One is called karma. Now in America, it's also coming. Karma means action. So you perform, you cannot remain idle even for a second. Suppose physically you can't move your hand, but mentally you'll be thinking also. So it is also action. So I say, it is due to karma. They have done the bad karma, so they are born in such a abject poverty, So then it's not the greatest thing, because they have got the same potential. And I have so many stories to tell. And I have built in the long time back, it happened in Delhi. So I was going in Delhi, so India, if you have been opportunity to visit India, there will be a street on the begging. And they will just, here is America is a different system. Here you write on the flag card, can you help me, this and that. But India, if you are going by car, they'll knock your windshield. So then there was one child. He was just hardly 5 years of child. So then I got out from my car, and then I said, why you are begging? So where is your parents? Can you take me to your house? So this boy got scared, So then, because, I'm Swami, so therefore he might be kidnapping this child, It's very, so then I got a cops. I said, come with me, and I want to meet his parents where they are. So reality, I find out they're a professional beggar. He has 3 children, and he will throw the children to different places. Then I ask, why you are doing this thing? Do you want to not lead better life? So I want you to help it. So I don't want to, this child, so if you allow me, So I'm not Swami, I'm not going to make him Swami, okay? He will live with you. What I'm going to do is to provide you facilities. So that you can send to school. So then I sent that boy into school, and then he did very well. He was in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, he topped. I was monitoring how he is developing. So then I said, you see, so I got the answer when I was thinking why I bought in silver spoon, but here is the same talent, but he didn't get the opportunity. So I'm here to provide the opportunity. So when I went to India, actually in the beginning I was thinking of starting engineering college. So I have taught some of many institute in India also. There's one guy, he is vice president now for this what you call MBA wire.
Which one?
NV wire company. Another is he was working for this one, Microsoft. He's the vice president of Microsoft. So I asked, can you become a principal? Because I'm in America. I can't run the institution. I can provide. So you see, this all led to believe something. So my friend, he became principal of Patna Science College. It was called Oxford of Asia. So then he told me, why you are thinking about, why don't you start from scratch? What are you talking about? He said, there are some people who have started a small school. They have about 40 children. It's co-education. I said, you like, I can take you there. I said, I'd love to go. So I went there. It is the interior where I have started school. The capital is called Patna. So it's just 35 kilometers from Patna. It's a rural area. The villagers, they are all laborer and all. They don't know anything about education. So then I said, So now there are 40. They have one room and there was one teacher. I said, by the way, how much you are paying for this rent? He said, I pay about less than 200 rupees. So I said, okay, I'll give you
It's like
for
$5.
1 year. Yeah, less than, 10 penny or something like that. So I gave, they said, I'll give you 1 year, and I'll give you the dress, make the uniform. So then gradually I started, then I said, okay. So now I started in 91, so in 94 I bought a land. And gradually, then I saw the children. Why I made a uniform? Because India, every country has ethical diversity. Like India, there's so-called, social stigma, like casteism, there are different castes belong. So lower caste means untouchable, So those are the things. So I said, no, make uniform. So that, and then I went door to door. And I told to the farmers and those illiterate people, I said, I use the 3D. The first D stand for disgusting, demeaning, and dangerous. I said, you see how with these children, you see your daughter looks so good, so beautiful. You see her smile. So do you want to live in the sin? So send your girl to my school. Because in India also, so in the beginning, the ratio was about 65 or 35. To make the story short, now I went this time for the last 3 years. Now the number is even. And I'm so happy in the sense when I see the girls, and the girls are out beating the boys. Because when I go to answer the question, they're always answering me. And the social change also, because as you know, if you want to bring a social change, education is one of the greatest change for social change.
So this is like a major phenomenon right now in India, which is, and we did a few podcasts about this too, which is that there's a revolution, and it was discussed in the previous panel, but there's a revolution with young women in India, and it's being led by its young women and instigated in large part by its mothers. One of our folks who, he comments on, this issue because he wrote a book. He hasn't been to speak here yet, but he will soon. He wrote a book on it, and he every place he went in rural areas, cities, it was constantly the case where mothers, wives, they didn't want their daughters to have the life that they were living, and were encouraging their daughters to not even marry until they wanted to. Get your own money, get yourself secure, and then find whoever it is that you want. And this sort of phenomenon is getting so liberal so fast, somehow it's just taken the country by storm. I mean, it's followed a lot of phenomena in the country, like major.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Bumble, and I don't know if I assume folks are familiar with Bumble. It's a dating app, and they're bringing it to India. Priyanka Chopra is partnering with the founder of that dating app company, and they're launching it. So, I mean, goes hand in hand with exactly what you're saying.
Definitely. I mean, that's another thing I'm curious about is like, based on where you guys sit and the data that you see come through, the information that you get from the foreign offices, what other major trends are you seeing where you just can't put out enough content about it, or that you just see the involvement or the engagement on certain issues just skyrocket? Ben, what do you think?
Well, I should be hastened to say that because I'm not in market, it's hard to judge that on a case-by-case basis. But I think we are launching in November with Snap over there, so we're expecting that the kind of permutations of content that happen specifically to that platform are going to be something that got adopted really fast. Excuse me. We think that there are insights to be taken from local players in India, like MX Player, that are going to help to drive content that lives through the OTT landscape, and in fact, finding the right price point relative to production and distribution for the Indian market is going to create some new forms of content. And beyond that, I mean, I think, again, that 180 million people who are coming online to vote next year, that's a huge story. We obviously are all, I don't know if everybody in the room is burned out on elections today. I am. So Daryl's never burned out on elections. But in any case, that obviously is going to be a gigantic story, a huge opportunity for us to grow our news market, and something that reflects many different realities and groups.
What do you see, Daryl? I mean, you see a lot of the data come through, and I guess popular themes that come up?
In India, the thing that I find the most fascinating is the gender story. I just wrote about this in the book I'm coming out in February. It is an incredibly patriarchal society. It's a society in which marriage is basically 100%. You really don't have an option to be single in India. It's a society in which women still get married at a very early age, but women are starting to game the system in a very interesting way. So they're getting married at a really early age, but they're only having 2 kids. And they're taking control of their reproduction, and they're taking control of their education, and they're taking control of their potential to be economic contributors for exactly the same reasons that you just gave a minute ago, which is that women want different lives than the lives that their mothers and grandmothers had. So when you take a look at what's happening, even in places like slums, because I went to a slum when I was in Delhi, and watching people, in a slum take a smartphone out from underneath their sari and take a look at something when you're doing an interview with them. I mean, once you have that, you never go back. I mean, it never changes. So one of the most disruptive things that you're going to see happening in India over the space of the next while is the empowerment of women and the role that they're going to play in Indian society. I also believe, this is a panel that's on youth, but if you want to know what the most powerful economic force is going to be in the world, in my view, coming from today onward, it's going to be the power of older women in the world. And we talk a lot about younger women, but it's going to be the power of older women. Why? Because they live longer, they have more wealth, there's more of them than we understand in the world, and they're absolutely underrepresented, silent in most of the things that we talk about in terms of commerce. But as the population patterns move forward, they're going to become a more and more powerful element. It's going to be more of a youthful play in India, obviously, but more and more countries around the world, that's going to be the new power consumer group. It's going to be women over the age of 40, 45, and older. So that's a trend for you.
Big time, and that interplay between the generations is super interesting, right? I mean, you see this through the unit of the family. There's this really wonderful family that I stay with in Delhi, and I was telling them about one of my younger friends was telling me, which is that she doesn't want to get married. She's going to make her own money, and wife next to husband says, yeah, that's the way it should be. Why not? And guy looks across and, wow, I never expected you to say that. And she said, oh, we've been encouraging that the whole time.
Well, they have an expression for the complete family in India. It's we two, our two. Right, and it's been a government campaigns all over the country for the longest time to get people to actually reduce their birth rates. And guess what? It worked. And so the birth rate in India is probably at about replacement level now. But that's not just a reflection of the effect of government programs. It's really a reflection about the empowerment of women. Because if you want to find a place that has extremely high birth rates, look at places that are patriarchal, look at places that are impoverished, look at places where women are not educated. That's where you have high birth rates. In India, it's collapsing.
So what's cool to you in India, Diane? I know that you've...
Food?
Oh, yes, the food.
Yeah, the food is fantastic.
I love the food.
So I asked Ben the question about what resonates and things like that, and curious about, because, again, you've been guiding these partnerships and things. Anything stand out? Have you been there recently?
I'm actually going in 3 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, I have to, yeah. But I always, it's just such a long trip, but I do love the food, Daryl.
I mean, we're so excited about all the different things that we have going on in the market. We're doing a partnership with McDonald's, actually, for youth, where each Happy Meal, they're going to get, it's only on Saturdays, they actually get a basketball. So that's another way that we're getting to young kids. I mean, we continue to focus on our content efforts. Our junior NBA program, which I think I mentioned earlier, that's in partnership with Reliance Foundation. So Reliance is one of, obviously, the largest companies, the second largest company in the market. We've been partnered with them since 2013. And when we started the junior NBA program with them, I think we were in 2 cities. We're at 34 cities now. And we were hitting 200,000 kids, getting 200,000 kids to play the sport of basketball at the onset. We're at 6 million kids now. And so we're continuing to just grow that. Last year, we opened an academy in Greater Noida, where we have 24, right now just male young boys learning the right way to play basketball, and we're really hoping to find a top prospect from that group. So that's another investment that we're making.
You're reminding me of the comment that you made earlier about influencers. If ever there was a place where getting the right influencer can just blow up the whole thing in the best possible way, it's India. So they pay a lot of attention to Indian celebrities outside of India. They pay a lot of attention to executives that are successful outside of India. What kind of folks are you tapping to, access some of these younger people?
We have nothing that I can share, but we're definitely in talks with Indian celebrity that is hugely popular in the market. Maybe in 4 weeks we'll learn about that.
We'll get back to you guys.
She's enjoying her bachelorette in Amsterdam right now. If you guys are on social media, you probably will know who. But yeah, I mean, we're 100% focused on that. But it's not just, Hollywood or, American stars, right? We're also working with local stars, even like ex-script players, and we're tapping into that market as well.
So, Swami, tell us what we should think about Indian young people that you've been dealing with. Most of the time that we visit India as foreign business people, it's usually in the urban centers, right? It's Delhi, it's Mumbai, it's maybe you get out into Agra or other places that are now quite large that exceed the size of most American cities. So, but dealing with folks outside of the major cities is a completely different phenomenon. How different are Indian young people, or Indian people in general, in the rural areas from the urban centers?
Just out of the way, this democracy, it was introduced first time in the world from Indian Lichvi dynasty, which is from my state, democracy in the world. And as Daryl was telling, because every parents in India, they want their children, their dream. Here you have different way to measurement. Suppose even you don't study, just take a guitar and play, become a rock and musician, we get the name. Their measurement in India is your academic performance. So all the parents, they want their daughter and sons to become doctors and engineers. So that is the trend. So education has been very big. If you read about the Indian history, Nalanda University was situated in Bihar, was the oldest universities. Was 17,000 students used to study from all South Asia countries. To come to the point that there, in India today, 9,000 people use cell phone. And rightly he said, sari means the cloth, the woman dress. So, and this time, because I've been out of the country for last 35 years in America, so I used to go only a few places. But this time I went to the northeast. Northeast means just on the border of China's Myanmar. Actually, there is a close, just you can walk to Myanmar. It is less than San Diego to what you call the border of Mexico, Tijuana. It's less than that. So this time, especially I wanted to see how the East looks. So I went to Imphal, Manipur. John Kim sees a basket, what he calls this boxer. See the gold medalist. So anyhow, and then I went to Gangtok, just near to Burma. And then I went to Assam. So then I saw even the rickshaw puller, with the poorest person to maintain the family is called the rickshaw puller, the paddling with the feet. I was surprised. So there was one CEO, we were traveling together. He's talking. It's not, it's still India, it has developed exponentially, developed in every field of life. So like the Modi has, this also depends on administrations, the policy, like what you can give us. For the last 4 years, there's been tremendous, his whole policy to afflict the people. And I feel so good about when I wish to travel in India by plane, only all the government, all the bureaucrats who are not on the pocket money buying the ticket, but they're all from the government paid for their traveling. But today, young, 25, 35. So I feel so good. And education, as India, I was talking about it culturally. India, there is nothing like a boyfriend, girlfriend. The parents arrange marriage, whether you like it or not. And it works. It has been working since today also, but it has been happening like there's no system in divorce and all that. So I'm talking about my school children. So this time I went, I have started this school from now kindergarten, nursery to 12th grade. So 12th grade, they are having age of 15 years old, girl. So then I got the 5 girls. I said, I asked them personally what you wanted. Because as he said, not in educated people, but rural in area, they get married earlier, at the age of 16, 15 and all that. It is still happening. It's a truth. We have to accept it. So then
especially in the rural areas.
Rural area, that's what I'm saying. City,
young,
they don't, as you said, everybody wants their career. So up to 23, 24, 28, you want to get better education, get a job, then you want to get settled. So the girls also don't want to get married. And the boys also, the parent doesn't push now. But in the rural, it still exists, the lack of education. So it's happening. So then I asked the children, because my teacher told me, these 5 children, girls refuse to get married. He said, no, I don't want to get married. I want to pursue my higher education. It was so appealing to me. And then other thing, I just said, this greatest things we achieved, my purpose was that demolish the so-called stigma of casteism. So all the children, because they have the same uniform, they sit the same bench, so that has been completely gone. And also, they used to people in health by sector, the people used to suffer from diarrhea, malaria, conjunctivitis, due to the hygienic, sanitation. So this has been completely wiped out, because when the girls are coming to school, they have to take shower, they have to wash their hands. So the mother is not literate, but when they're cooking, they're different boxes, so they have to wash their hands and all. So education is such a great asset, and that's one of the reasons why India has emerged as the 5th largest economy in the world.
So we've seen it from multiple levels, right? We've got it from the top level demographic information, the outlook for probably the next 20, 30 years, perhaps, and then we've had what companies are doing. Swami, thank you for sharing with us what you've been experiencing and what you know from your school. And it's an exciting place, and young people there are, one of the things that I was hoping to pull out of here was that, there seems to be a lot of convergence based on the use of mobile phones. So, maybe they're not going out to nightclubs all the time or doing other things that young people are doing, but the tastes and the preferences and, interests and things like that, it does seem to converge in a lot of ways. So anyway, thank you, and really appreciate everybody on this session. Thank you very much.